Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sudden Wealth. I hope you guys enjoyed your wonderful weekend and you've recovered some strength for the upcoming week. If you do enjoy the content, please consider dropping that like and subscribe. It greatly helps the channel. Once again, we are at 850, and it's been a great growth of the channel, so I really appreciate all of you for helping me out. Now, today, as it's Sunday, I always like to look a little bit more at the macro, or if you want, long-term trends in the economy, in the world, things that where we are progressing to, but in my view, have limited impact in stocks or crypto in the short run. But it's important to understand where we're going. So, going back to 1971, where Nixon took the dollar from the gold standard and virtually all the other fiat currencies. The euro didn't exist, obviously, but the European currencies, the Asian currencies, all out of the gold standard. Now, there's a very funny thing, which is if you look at that moment and then you look at the trade deficits and budget deficits from the US, as soon as the US drops the gold standard, they go like this. So the deficits start to increase dramatically. The reason is you can now print money much easier than before. So you can basically artificially pump your economy as long, this is the key, as long as the rest of the world needs your currency. Because if you do it on a useless currency, useless from a standpoint of important for other countries to hold, you're going to find out very quickly, just like Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe, even Brazil did, how crappy your paper currencies really are. And you notice them very quickly. You notice that very quickly. Now, if you ask, but why did then the US did that? Why did we get out of the gold standard if basically all the other metrics just got worse, right? The reason is actually, surprisingly enough, democracy itself. You see, we are supposed to have good periods and bad periods, just like in anything in life. You're supposed to eat, you're supposed to sleep, you're supposed to be awake. So you have different, cycles within you. Yeah, even the seasons, right? You can always have summer. Well, in certain parts of the world you can, but you see the point, right? You have good times, bad times, high times, low times. That's part of life. But the issue is, if you've been elected and the bad times happen under you, most likely than not, you're not going to be reelected. Neither your party is going to be reelected. So you have the temptation to do something that in the short run makes things look better, but in the long run is extremely damaging. You see, the way that politicians think is, the long run, it may become someone else's problem. You see what I mean? Not mine. What matters is that I get elected and then that I get reelected, and the good of the country, if you will. It's completely secondary or even tertiary, I would say. I would say number one is to get elected. Number two, to get reelected. Number three, make sure that the people that got you elected by giving you money are happy with you, so they give you money next time again. And number four, maybe if we have a bit of time, let's try to see if we can do something better for the country. So this is why you see over the last 50 years degrading of conditions across the West. Now, there's one thing that fights this, which is technology. Technology improves our lives dramatically, and it's deflationary, meaning, think about it, in the 80s, if you would do a long-range call, it would cost you, $1 per minute. Nowadays, you do a video call for free using a multitude of different apps that you can use, that you can download for free. Everything is for free, so it's extremely deflationary. Now, the issue is, why do I say things are getting worse? Well, in the 60s, a person with a high school diploma in the United States could have 4 children, pay a house, have 2 cars, go on holidays every year, and put his kids through college. Nowadays, both parents, even master's degree, maybe they can have one or two kids, maybe one car. The second car may be a lease by the company that they work for, and they work later and later and later. So that is the payoff for all this money printing and all this artificially meddling with the economy. The truth is, the public, general public, has become extremely used to this. See, in the past, governments were viewed as the problem, so they would step aside as much as possible. The only thing they would really do would be protection against domestic and foreign enemies, and that's about it. And then people would, be successful or unsuccessful, pretty much depending on their own merits. Also some luck, right? Let's be honest. You also need a bit of luck in life, but that actually made generations much stronger. You see, I just give this example. In World War II, you had men faking their own age to go to war. So they were underage. In theory, they could not go to war, but they would come up with mechanisms to showcase they were above the legal age and they could go to war. Nowadays, they do anything to get out of any discomfortable situation, whatever the case may be. So it's a complete different attitude towards life than what we had before. So now we've been educated and basically, programmed to like increasingly guaranteed things by the government. You see, but the issue with this is that the government makes no money. And they are extremely inefficient and useless in allocating resources. So every time they provide something for someone for free, it comes at the expense of someone else, and they take a cut on the way through. So and the problem with this is if you let the system go too far on this. So basically, we went from the gold standard, which politicians hate. Why? Because if you print money to make things look better, you feel the results of inflation very quickly because because the amount of gold you have is finite, so there's a limit to it. So you cannot just print money out of nowhere because it's pegged to a metal. So that part you immediately tell. When something is wrong, you tell it very quickly. In a fiat system, it can take years and years and years before you notice what's really going around. And most people will actually get used to the new things over time. And then it's much easier also to put the blame on the person that is there. It's a little bit like this. Imagine that I ran for office and I give free things to everyone and I put everything on a credit card, right? People are going to love me. My God, this guy is great, blah, blah. But then the guy that comes after me needs to pay the credit card bill. But how can he pay the credit card bill? He needs to cut on spending. He needs to cut the programs that people love. He needs to stop giving free stuff, blah, blah, blah. So he's going to be hated, despite the fact that what he's doing is cleaning my mess. But people don't understand that. So because they pay no attention to it, because they are always distracted with something else. So they don't realize where the problem initially started, okay? And the top 1%, or the top, if you want, even top 20% of society actually understands this. So then if you look at the tax codes, pretty much across the developed world, it's very beneficial for people who own assets and who own businesses. Most importantly, own assets via debt. Why? Because as soon as we took the dollar from the gold standard, all money has become now debt. The dollars that you carry are just zero coupon, 0-day bonds. That's it. They are your asset, but they are the Federal Reserve's liability at the same time. You see, gold, you don't have this problem because it's just a metal. If you own it, it's your asset, it's not somebody else's liability. So what that has caused is a huge difference between rich and poor people. Why? Not because, and here is where the distinction comes from, let's say, the communists and the socialists, from people like me who really don't care that much about those things, which is rich people understand what's happening, so they position themselves accordingly. Unfortunately, the majority of people are not rich, and they are feeling all the negative side of it without the positive side of it. And they see a bunch of a minority people with more and more and more and more money, while they themselves need to work harder and harder to keep up with the same living standard. And that creates the division that you now so clearly see amongst everything, pretty much across the developed world. Now, the politicians, the economists, the people in the media that you see on TV, they live in a little bubble. You see, they live in a surrounding area of their own success, so they don't see it. They don't see outside of it. But there's a reason why Marine Le Pen is gaining so much popularity in France, why the new Dutch prime minister is virtually the Marine Le Pen of the Netherlands, why Trump won, why Boris Johnson won, why the extreme parties are winning in Italy, why even the extreme parties are getting more popularity in Australia. I mean, this is happening all across the world. Why? Because the great majority of people is getting destroyed slowly but surely by the system. And despite technology helping to, let's say, lower the negative effects of the blow, it's just not enough. And the issue is, once you get the system used to a certain level of money printing, you need to go exponentially higher for you to get the desired effect. You see, it's actually, if you think about it, it makes perfect sense. There's a problem, you print money, problem goes away. People inherently think, okay, yeah, but that sounds really bad, because if that's the case, why do I even pay taxes? Why do I even work? You can just print money, right? And everything is fine. Of course, people understand that there's something off going around, but they cannot really pinpoint what it is. And the way that this ends is you end in a society like Japan, in which half the population goes bankrupt if they have a child, and basically your population just kind of dies out over time, like it's happening in Japan. And productivity is close to flat. Inflation is typically 0%, growth is 0%. It's just like the country stopped in the late 80s. And that's it. So that's one of the end games. The other end game is things get so uncontrolled that you need to print so much money that eventually countries stop accepting your currency and holding it as reserve. And all of a sudden, you're going to find out very quickly what inflation really looks like. And the reason is, people always have these big theories. Oh, it's the people, the top 1% manipulating everything. But no, typically these things come from governments. So this is actually the problem with democracy, is you are incentivized to do things which are sound and feel good on the short term, but are very damaging on the long term. So in an ideal world, politicians should just come, we just had 5, 6, 7 very good years, and now it's time that we have 1 or 2 years of recession and companies go bankrupt and people go unemployed. It's part of the cycle. But the point is, we go up, we go down, we go up, we go down, but it's like a stair. You get increasingly better every single time. In the past, people would say, okay, this industry is now a problem. There's another industry over there. I just go work over there. It's no problem. There was a time in the US where almost half of the population worked in agriculture. Fast forward 30 years, and 6% would feed the entire planet. So all the other people had to go to a different industry and make it over there. In the past, people would welcome that challenge. Things were hard, but people managed to push through, and the world would get better little bit at a time. Nowadays, we are conditioned to want everything for granted, for free. We are entitled for everything. And that incentivizes the politicians to do whatever it takes to make people happy and to basically ensure their election and re-election at the cost of the country. Now, where does this all end? In those two scenarios that I've said, and most likely other regions of the globe will become the best place to be in the next 30 to 40 years. I'm thinking about Asia Pacific, thinking about certain countries in the Middle East, like the UAE, maybe even Saudi, Qatar, etc. those countries have the potential to become much better than they really are. But you see, when I say things like this, it sounds all crazy because Europe, Australia, the Western world has dominated for 250 years. So what I'm saying, it sounds ridiculous. But if you go back in history, there were times where the West, if you will, the West of the time, of course, the US didn't exist, right? But the West of the time was not the best place to live. There was a time where the best place to live was China or Baghdad or Egypt or places that were not Europe. So when people say, "Oh, that can never happen," it's the same story of, "Oh, the U.S. dollar will why would the U.S. dollar stop being the reserve currency?" And I would argue, well, the U.S. dollar is the fifth reserve currency. That means the number one, the number two, the number three, the number four already collapsed. So when you're saying that the US dollar will last forever, you are the one on the wrong side of history, because what you're advocating is something that has never happened in history, and it's quite understandable taking into account human nature why these things collapse over X periods of time and why these things shift. But when people say, "Oh, that could never happen because this, of that, of the others," I can promise you that if you would go back in time and you would tell people certain things that would happen in the future, and in some cases short-term future, I'm pretty sure people put you straight on a straitjacket and will send you to a psychiatric hospital. So, and with that, guys, I'll leave you be. That was a little bit of the rant for the macro on Sunday, and I'll catch you in the next one.